The Pentagon is destroying evidence of its own war crimes. This was reported by the Lever reporter Freddy Brewster, who joins us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
First time redacted guest, hopefully not the last. So here's what your story shows is that you found declassified versions of government reports showing that an entire year's worth of records regarding operations in the Middle East and Africa were missing, mostly during the Obama years, which I think most people don't know were some of the bloodiest years that the US enacted on the Middle East due to Obama's, this is me saying this, murderous foreign policy. So, what can you tell us about what you saw in these documents?
Yeah, so this comes from a declassified version of a Government Accountability Office report that dug into these crime allegations from 2012 to 2022. And one of the more alarming things it found was that there were no crime allegation reports for all of 2015 for a sub command center overseeing Iraq and Syria. And this is when the Obama administration was oversaw thousands of airstrikes in the country, and when during the height of some of the fighting in Syria as well. Um, there were also records missing for 2017 for all of CENTCOM, which oversees operations in the Middle East. And this coincides with a time that Amnesty International accused pro-Iraqi government forces and U.S.-backed forces of potentially committing war crimes in that area. So, pretty alarming stuff right from the government's own little like investigative research arm that is there to hold some of the agencies and Congress accountable.
Is the agency you're talking about the Government Accountability Office, the GAO?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so one of the things that they say is, well, there's just no comprehensive way to retain such reports, as in, we don't have a protocol. So, what do you think that means? Is just, oh, when we do bad things, we can't track it. There's no way to track it because we have reports on other crimes, such as you mentioned the 2019 bombing in Syria that killed more than 60 civilians. How do they square that?
Yeah, so what the Government Accountability Office found is in the Government Accountability Office is really just it's its own separate entity, and all it does is just do investigations and reports looking into a wide variety of issues, everything from Department of Defense, war crime allegations to like how's the economy doing and what's credit card debt like. So they cover a wide range of things. And the key thing they found in this is that there's just no comprehensive way that the Department of Defense tracks these. They found that it's kind of like a hodgepodge mix that's left to the six different command centers across that are stationed across the world. And at times, even those command centers, they leave these allegation reportings to be left to its own sub command centers that we saw that we just mentioned in 2015, the sub command center overseeing Iraq and Syria. So it's really just like a hodgepodge way of tracking these, and no sort of centralized way to, bring these things together.
But wouldn't an after action report suffice for something like this? Do they think that it's just, oops, these slipped through the cracks, or were records destroyed?
They didn't say records were destroyed. They just said there was a
Okay.
lack of a comprehensive system. Um, but this stuff is alarming regardless. It's a lack of a comprehensive system throughout of all of the foreign interventions that the United States gets involved in is alarming stuff in and of itself.
Yes, absolutely. And so is it more of an anomaly that we know about the 2019 bombing that killed those civilians in Syria? Because most of the time it's a oops, stepped on that bug, and then we just move on.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. And it's also, the GAO, those guys also they didn't really dig into the validity of some of these reports, and they also said that they found at least 47 documented allegations of potential war crimes that took place during this 10-year time period, but they also said that they're not quite sure if that's the depth of it. They weren't able to dig into the entire universe, as they called it, of potential war crime allegations.
Right. It's reminiscent of a story in Chelsea Manning's own biography where he talks about finding a target, giving his supervisors an address and saying, I'm not quite sure. I think this guy might have moved. Check this. and then they bombed the old address anyway. And there's no way for us to ever know that. Civilians were killed, and there's no tracking of this. And so not only does this do people wrong, clearly, who live there in a horrific kind of way, but it makes our own soldiers unsafe because then they are seen as these careless murderers overseas, right?
Yeah, it is. It's very alarming, to say the least. And I interviewed somebody from um, like they're a human rights expert, and they had mentioned that like the Defense Department gives out extremely limited information on these war crime allegations. So just the fact that the GAO found 47 potential allegations is in itself like a big deal.
Right. Now, in I think 2021 or 22, Lloyd Austin promised more accountability for these types of things. Do you think since then, because your report that you saw covered between 2012 and 2022, so since then, do you have any idea or any indication that reporting of this magnitude will get better?
I'm not holding my breath, to be totally honest with you. The another story I published that looked into how the U.S. is tracking the amount of arms it's sending to Ukraine. The GAO office also found that we're doing a horrible job of tracking the end use of all those weapons. I'm not holding my breath on them improving their systems.
Right. So, what can we do then to demand more accountability, given that our government is running off a cliff of debt in order to support these foreign wars and not improving on any systems?
Yeah, you can pressure your lawmakers, but even that is, um, you know, not quite
Yeah.
sure how that works because
Right.
that a majority of the American public, is against funding to both Israel and Ukraine, and yet those bills just passed the other day. So
Right. Well, that's
yeah,
really discouraging, but I really appreciate your reporting. I'm going to suggest that everyone go and read this article on the Lever called Is the Pentagon Hiding War Crimes? And maybe you can come back another time and tell us about the report on Ukraine because it's not a shocker, but at least the more we know about it, the less they're hiding from us. Whether they're going to do anything about it, again, your guess is as good as mine. So it was a pleasure to talk to you about this. Please come back on Redacted another time.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
I really hoped you enjoyed watching this video. YouTube thinks that you'll actually like this next video right here. It's personalized based on your own viewing habits. So if you watch the video, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think about it. And we will see you next time, everyone.